You will not get away with this.
Billionaire accused his maid of a crime until his son exposed a secret that changed everything. The sound of the judge's gavel echoed through the silent courtroom. "Order!" he shouted. All eyes turned toward the tall, angry billionaire standing near the witness stand. His sharp suit looked flawless, but his face was red with fury. The maid stood trembling beside her lawyer, tears running down her cheeks. "You betrayed me!" the billionaire yelled, pointing at her. "You stole from me after everything I did for you." The crowd gasped. Reporters leaned forward, cameras flashing. The maid tried to speak, her voice cracking. "Sir, I swear I didn't take anything." But he wouldn't listen. To him, her silence was guilt. And then, just as the judge was about to give a final word, his son stood up in the crowd. "Dad, stop!" he shouted. Everyone turned. The boy's voice trembled, but his eyes were steady. "She didn't steal from you." "I did." The room exploded with whispers and shock. The billionaire froze, his hand still raised, his mouth half open. The maid gasped, covering her face as tears fell harder. The judge's gavel hit the table again. Quiet in the court. But no one could stay quiet. The truth had just cracked open like thunder. The billionaire's voice trembled. "What were you saying?" The son stepped forward slowly. "You heard me," he said. "I'm the one who took the money. And I did it to protect her." Everyone's heart stopped. Protect her? Protect the maid from what? The billionaire stared at his son, confusion and disbelief swirling in his eyes. And before anyone could speak again, the boy whispered something that made even the judge lean forward in shock. "Dad, she's not just our maid. She's..." The courtroom was frozen in silence. The boy's last words hung in the air like thunder that hadn't yet rolled away. "She's not just our maid. She's..." Before he could finish, the judge banged the gavel again. "Order! Young man, if you have something to say it clearly." The boy swallowed hard, his eyes filling with tears. He looked at his father, the man everyone feared, respected, and envied. The man who ruled boardrooms like a king, but had no idea what was happening under his own roof. She's the one who saved my life," he said, his voice shaking. Gasps filled the room. The billionaire frowned. "What are you talking about?" The boy took a deep breath. "Last year, when you were in Dubai, I got very sick. I had a seizure. There was no one home, only her." He turned toward the maid, whose hands were still trembling. "She broke the rules and took me to the hospital in your car. That's how she got the money. She used your car to pay for the hospital bills, because if she hadn't, I would have died." The crowd erupted in whispers. Reporters scribbled wildly, their cameras flashing again. The billionaire's face turned pale. He remembered that trip, the emergency call from the doctor, the unexpected bill that no one could explain. He had ignored it, assuming it was a bank error. Now it made sense. You save him?" he asked, his voice cracking. The maid nodded slowly, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I tried to explain, sir, but you wouldn't listen." For the first time, the billionaire didn't know what to say. His throat tightened, his pride fighting with guilt. The boy continued, voice steady now. "You were ready to destroy her life, Dad, the woman who saved mine." The courtroom fell silent again. You could hear a pin drop. And just when it seemed like the truth had finally come out, the maid suddenly fainted. Gasps filled the courtroom again. The boy screamed her name as she collapsed to the floor. The judge stood up. Someone call a doctor. But the billionaire was frozen, staring at her motionless body, his mind spinning with 1,000 questions. What other secrets was she hiding? The sound of chaos filled the courtroom. People rushed forward as the maid lay on the floor, unconscious. The billionaire's son knelt beside her, shaking her gently. "Please, wake up," he cried, his voice trembling. Paramedics burst through the door minutes later. They lifted her onto a stretcher, attaching wires and checking her pulse. The boy refused to leave her side, but the billionaire stood frozen, his mind storming with regret. For years, he had seen her as just another worker in his mansion. Quiet, respectful, always obedient. Never once had he imagined that the woman he accused could hold such a powerful truth. When the ambulance drove away, the billionaire and his son followed closely behind. Hours later, at the hospital, the doctor stepped out of the emergency room with a serious face. "She's stable," he said softly, "but her body is weak. She's been hiding a condition for a long time." The boy looked confused. "What condition?" The doctor sighed. "Heart complications. Likely stress-related. Whatever she's been going through, it's been eating her alive." The billionaire lowered his head, guilt twisting his chest. "Because of me," he whispered. The doctor gave him a long look. "Maybe it's time you asked what else she's been keeping inside." When they entered her hospital room, the maid was asleep, pale and fragile. The boy sat beside her, holding her hand. That was when he noticed a small brown envelope under her pillow. The corner peeked out just enough to catch his eye. He pulled it out carefully. Written in shaky handwriting were the words, "If something happens to me, please give this to him." He turned the envelope over. It was addressed to his father. The billionaire froze. His heart pounded as he opened it. Inside was an old letter, slightly yellowed in a photograph, a young woman holding a baby in her arms. The woman in the photo looked just like the maid, and the baby looked like him. The billionaire's hands trembled. "This can't be real." The boy's eyes widened. "Dad, what is it?" He looked up, eyes glassy with shock. She's not just your maid," he whispered. "She's your—" The billionaire's hands shook as he stared at the photograph. The face of the young woman looked too familiar. Her eyes, her smile, it was unmistakable. The boy leaned closer. "Dad, what does it mean?" The billionaire swallowed hard, voice trembling. "That woman, that's her. But this picture, this was taken over 20 years ago." He unfolded the letter slowly. The paper was old, the ink slightly faded, but the words were still clear enough to read. "If you ever find this, it means I couldn't tell you the truth in person. I never wanted money or a title. I only wanted our son to grow up safe. When you turned your back on me, I left, but I never stopped protecting him. I became the maid in your house not to serve you, but to watch over the child we once had together." The billionaire froze. His heart thumped so loud, he could barely breathe. He looked at his son in disbelief. The son who had grown up believing his mother had died years ago. The boy's eyes widened. "You mean she's my—" Before he could finish, tears streamed down the billionaire's face for the first time in his son's life. "Yes," he whispered, voice cracking. "She's your mother." The room went silent. Only the steady beeping of the hospital monitor filled the air. The boy's hand trembled as he looked at the sleeping maid, the woman who had cooked his meals, cleaned his room, and tucked him into bed when his father was away. The woman he never knew had carried such a heavy secret. "Why didn't you tell me?" the boy whispered, his voice breaking. The billionaire couldn't answer. His pride had built walls too high for love to climb. He had been blind, too busy chasing wealth, too proud to look back at the woman he had once loved and abandoned. Suddenly, the maid stirred in her bed. Her eyes fluttered open weakly. She saw both of them standing there, and tears filled her eyes before she could even speak. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want you to hate me." The billionaire stepped closer, guilt choking him. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her lips trembled. "Because you never would have believed me back then. You had everything, and I had nothing. I just wanted to see our son grow into a good man." The billionaire dropped to his knees beside her bed, tears falling onto the floor. "I accuse you of stealing when all you did was love us both." She reached out a weak hand, touching his face. "It's not too late if you still remember what love feels like." But before he could answer, her heartbeat monitor began to beep faster. The doctor rushed in, shouting orders. The boy screamed, "Mom!" The billionaire froze, paralyzed with fear as nurses swarmed around her. And then her hand slipped from his. The line on the monitor turned flat, clear. The doctor's voice cut through the chaos as electricity flashed. The boy clutched his father's arm, tears streaming down his face. "Please, save her." The billionaire could barely stand. His mind screamed 1,000 regrets all at once. Every cruel word, every moment of pride, every time he looked at her like she was nothing. He would have traded every cent he owned just to hear her voice again. The beeping flatlined for a few painful seconds. Then, suddenly, a single beep returned. Then another. The monitor came back to life. "She's breathing," the nurse cried. The boy fell to his knees in relief, whispering, "Thank you, God." The billionaire covered his face, shaking. His tears fell silently. Not the tears of a powerful man, but of a broken one who finally understood what mattered most. Hours later, when she opened her eyes, she saw them both sitting beside her, the two people she had loved most in the world. "You stayed," she whispered weakly. The billionaire took her hand, his voice low and unsteady. "I almost lost you again. I don't deserve your forgiveness." She smiled faintly. "You were angry because you didn't know, but now you do." The boy leaned forward, still holding her other hand. "We're a family, right? That's all that matters now." Her weak smile grew wider. "Yes, a family." The billionaire's heart clenched. "I've spent my whole life chasing wealth and power, but none of it ever filled the emptiness inside me. You did, both of you." She wiped a tear from his cheek, then stopped running. "You found what you were looking for." A soft silence filled the room. The sunlight streamed to the window, painting everything in a golden glow, like life itself was giving them a second chance. The boy stood, looking at both of them with tearful eyes. "Dad, promise me something." The billionaire looked up. "Anything. Promise me you'll never let her work again. Not as a maid. Not ever." He nodded slowly. "I promise." And he meant it. From that day on, she never touched another broom, never scrubbed another floor. Instead, she sat at the dining table beside him, not as a servant, but as the woman who had saved his family twice, once with her silence and once with her love. Years later, when people asked the billionaire how he turned his life around, he would smile and say, "It wasn't my money that saved me. It was the woman I once accused of a crime, and the truth my son had the courage to reveal.